Friends, behind me are distinguished men and women of the global media driving a baby buggy, as you will see coming here, that is very wet after going through the skid pad. Now that is called an M performance car, not an M car. Funny thing, BMW sold 17,113 of cars that say M Performance. Well, not just cars, as you can see here, cars and crossovers. Baby buggies, in other words. Well, take a wild guess how many M cars they sold, like full-on, full-fat cars that you and I love. You would think more, right? Well, I hate to admit this, but the number is less. 14,043. So today, we need to do a tech review based on the popularity contest that is the M Performance, and it's going to be a crossover flavor. However, there are two flavors, one with an engine we really like. Okay, so built in for nomenclature and numbers that for the most part have nothing to do with the two engines on offer in the X4. Let's start with the basic, and that is the X4 X Drive 3.0i. There are no threes anywhere in this engine. It is a 2-liter, 4-cylinder, direct-injected gasoline turbocharged engine. 248 horsepower, comes in at 5,200 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 6,500 RPM. 258 pounds of torque, comes in at 1,450 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,800 RPM. That should sound incredibly familiar to you because that's the same engine that we drove in the 530 last summer. Then we move to this, and that's the X4 M40i X Drive. Again, there's really no 4 in anything about this engine. Actually, no, 4 valve per cylinder, but it's an inline 6, 3 liters, and it's 355 horsepower. Comes in at 5,500 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 6,500 RPM. The torque, 365, that comes in at 1,520 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,800 RPM. Now, a couple of interesting things. Number one, either one, any transmission you want, as long as it's an 8-speed automatic with a torque converter, and that goes to all 4 wheels. And number two, this is the M Performance model. So this is the one we're going to drive first, and just as like a programming note, there's going to be a big gap between the tech review and the full first drive review because there's a global embargo till July 1st when we will send this episode out to you. But something tells me when this engine grows up, it wants to be that. Perhaps it's just me, but I feel like I've been geeking out a lot regarding interior design as of late in these tech reviews. Today is not going to be one of those days because we've seen this design theme before a number of times. First in the G12-7 series, then in the G35 series, then we saw it in the X2. And I have to say in the X2, the general concept's the same and it looked good, but it didn't come together because the console was so low. I really feel that this theme that BMW has set with that G12-7 series, it needs the higher console to bring it all together, to make it complete. Now here there are a couple of changes, namely color and trim, which in this case, they did a beautiful job. Like, the color on this is great, but also it's the trim. The fact that they have this gray trim with this on pattern, if you were to just show me this just as a spec, I'd say that would look terrible inside of a car. But here it works very well, especially with like a slight contrast of the stitch on the top of the dash. The overall tactile feel is phenomenal, which, you know, BMW has been very good about this, especially even in that X2, which is a cheaper price point than this. This one's fitted with a head-up display, and this is the first time that I've seen this gesture control. Let's see if I can get it to work. I guess there it is. Yeah, it's got the gesture control that started in the G12 and then went into the G30. This one is the fancier, the M40i, which we will drive in the full first drive review. So it's got some more trim pieces like this here. This one's fitted with the Harman Kardon stereo, much nicer steering wheel, and can I just say again, vielen Dank for at least the outline of real gauges. Car like this, I understand TFT and it does more, but call me old-fashioned, I think a car like this really needs real gauges. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a crossover, but the person who's going to buy something like this, clearly they're saying I could have bought a lot of other cars, but I want the performance. At least give me some jewelry to look at. Other than that, man, this is a really nice place to be, especially considering that it has the panoramic roof, which lights up the whole thing. I think the only thing I would add to this is perhaps an Alcantara headliner, and maybe like a two-tone here where it's black here, and then maybe a lighter color here to really kind of pick up this two-tone interior design theme. Okay, there is one more thing I do need to geek out about, and yeah, it sort of falls under the heading of the interior, but it's more design. You know how you look down the hood of a Morgan, and those cars, you don't drive, you point them, because it has a very specific view out the windscreen. And then there's everything else. I mean, you could, I don't care how fancy you get, you can go to i8s, 911s, Aston Martins, they all kind of look the same looking out of the windshield. Yeah, there's some sort of like accentuation of detail on the hood, but it's not special. And I'm shocked to be saying this about a crossover. You look out of the windscreen, and the way they have shaped the hood, there's like these bulges, maybe 25% of the way in from the fender, but then it bows out to the fender, and it's something that you would expect in a special car, not something you would put your family in. And that brings us to driving dynamics, along with one huge change, aside from design, in the transition from Gen 1 to Gen 2 X4. And it's my favorite topic, construction, so go ahead and say it with me. Volkswagen is MQB, Volvo ist Spa auf Deutsch. Alles klar. And I don't mean, do you understand, or all is clear. I mean klar. That is the name of the platform that underpins the G12 7 Series, the G35 Series, upcoming X5, upcoming X7, and you guessed it, this. However, not everything makes the transition here. Like, for example, the front double wishbone suspension in the G35 Series is replaced here with McPherson struts. In the back, this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle like the 5 Series, however, obviously this one's all-wheel drive. It's packaged differently, this multi-link unit, to really take advantage of a crossover platform. Then it's connected to two different wheel and tire packages. The basic 3-liter model, or I should say the 3.0i, which is really a 2-liter 4-cylinder. That one is two 2560 R18s. Here in the more powerful M40i is two 4550 R19s. Now that's connected to adjustable dampers in this one here. And then there is a unique option that is on offer just in this one, which we will play around with in the coming full first drive review, so make sure you come back for that. Okay, so back to the hangar to discuss some rather important numbers. Let's start with dimensions. The wheelbase, 112.7 inches, and the overall length, 187.5. Both are up 2.1 inches and 3 inches respectively. Doesn't sound like a whole hell of a lot when you consider, well, 3 inches is what that, but when you consider the competitive set, the Mercedes GLC, the Audi Q5 or the Volvo XC60, just looking at the wheelbase of those vehicles, the GLC is 113.1 inches, the Audi is the biggest difference at 111, and the Volvo, which is my current favorite, at 112.8, almost like spot on. So when you add 3 inches in length and over 2 inches in wheelbase, that is a very big change. Now, what does that translate in terms of weight? Well, the 4-cylinder turbo, that one is 4,146 pounds. The 6-cylinder, which is the one we're going to drive in the coming full first drive review on July 1st, that one's 4,323 pounds. So about a little less than 200 pounds difference. Now, I do need to go a little inside baseball here now that we've gotten past all the technical stuff, and it's going to be about design. When I first turned up in South Carolina and was standing in front of the hotel looking at the diesel they had on display, I'm saying to myself, man, that doesn't look a whole hell of a lot different. Yeah, then I went around the back, and in the arse end, it looks so much different. But the rest of it, it's a two-box design. Really not even a box when you think about it, because it's got one of these like swoopy roof, like SUV kind of things. And to me, I guess there's only so much you can do with those two shapes, but I still feel like these two generations are almost too close in design and feel like they could have done more. But I am just one man, so I'm going to take this opportunity to turn this around to you and say, did BMW do enough in switching up the design from Gen 1 to Gen 2? And if they didn't, what more could they have done? And you know what, for good measure, let me know, do you drive one of these like swoopy design crossover SUV kind of things? And let me know what region of the world you hail from. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I need to leave you with two things. Number one, a very important programming note. There is going to be a gap between this tech review and the full first drive review, and that's really because of good news. BMW gave us very early access to this car, so much so there is a global embargo till July 1st, and that's when we will get you the full first drive review of the X4 M40i, of course the more powerful of the two, and at some point we'll have the four-cylinder turbo here in the hangar and out at Moto Canyon. And then number two, apparently Kumo's been having some fun with this F10 while I've been away, so we have to wash it and then go and have some fun with it together. Until we see you next time, bis später.